Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Regardless how each of us may view the current state of affairs in America, many would agree that we are living in tumultuous and uncertain times. But the times are only tumultuous and uncertain through the lens of our human perspective. I'm reminded in Romans 8:28 that for those who love God, all things work together for good. Naturally, one would ask how such a statement could be true when we humans are so viscerally reactive during these times. My response is the only path that makes sense is one ordained by God, and that things cannot work together if we humans are not working together. In fact, this is one thing I know for sure. Despite our anger and frustration at the pain caused by the intangible coronavirus and the ever-elusive and ever-evolving virus of racism, which are becoming so prevalent now that we cannot ignore them, I'm reminded to know God is God and to trust Him.
Amen.
How can I trust God when He has allowed so many people to die alone during this pandemic, or has allowed racism to flourish so covertly that a global response is required for African Americans to be heard about the pain that has plagued us over the last 400 years? Well, I have the answer. For through the human lens, life is pain and suffering. But it is the ignorance of spirit that allows the pain and suffering to become the focal point. God is real and has His plan, yet God also honors what we humans choose to embrace. If we embrace pain and suffering as our main focus, we receive more of that. If we, as a collective body, embrace God as our focal point, then the healing begins in all facets of life. How do I really know this is true? Imagine this metaphor. God is the photographer behind the camera. We humans are the camera, and life is the subject of the camera, the thing that we are choosing to see through the lens. Right now, you're watching this program through the lens of a camera, but you and I well know that there's more going on around this camera than just what you're seeing. So it matters how you focus and what happens when the lens is adjusted. The perception of the subject, therefore life, changes. We can point the camera wherever we choose. So if we peel back the layers of what is going on in our country and what has been going on in our country, then we will realize that God has been with us the whole time, allowing us to focus our camera lens upon whatever reality we agree to as a collective. Right now, something beautiful is happening under the pain and suffering. In fact, something beautiful has always been happening. But we take it for granted because we only focus on where we are now and all the sadness therein. What has been happening and what is happening is we are experiencing agape love. In these unprecedented times, we cannot take for granted that God is orchestrating a beautiful outcome in a way that our human minds cannot fathom. There is beauty mixed in with the chaos, and if we focus on that, we humans can do more than we ever imagined.
Yes.
God made us so powerful, yet we use so little of our minds to focus on how we can overcome these obstacles. We spend most of our energy every day focusing on pain and being numb to it. We know God is behind these unprecedented times because God is unprecedented and omnipresent, all being, and this is happening globally. The pandemic of coronavirus and the pandemic of racism are being exposed at a global level. And if we do not get on board with this agape love, there is going to be more pain and suffering to come to show us the way to that love.
Right.
For the division brought about by pain and suffering also reveals our love for our fellow brethren. Look at what we've already accomplished in our human history. And I don't have to convince you that 200 years ago, to fathom the existence of an airplane would have seemed impossible or considered an act of God. Yet only a nominal fraction of humankind fathomed the design of an airplane. We have so far fathomed treatments and medications for disease. We have fathomed laws for order, and we have fathomed an entire social structure that we have used for good and evil. But God gave us our minds and our hearts to align with His will. If we choose to do this, the sky is not even the limit. We can do so much more if we desire. We are told the Spirit intercedes for the saints according to the will of God. All we have to do is remember this truth and not take for granted the beauty of what we have already achieved in this chaos. We have learned to love our neighbor through social distance, and we have spoken up through the voiceless, through activism. Think of what we can do when we are in alignment with God's will and working together so that more good can happen. Of course, we don't have to believe this. We can choose to see the increased suffering, but it is our choice. And because God will move his plan forward with or without our consent. Won't it be more pleasurable, though, and more revelatory to choose love and watch how God shows up? I choose love every day, and I have seen the manifestation in my own life as I have clung to the knowledge that God is God and that God is love. I have been waiting with patient hope. My life isn't perfect, and it isn't without pain and suffering, but it is the contrast of that pain and suffering that is humanity. I can appreciate the pain and suffering as a contrast to the love that is underlying. We are humans trying to understand God as we go through our lives, and of course we are trying to learn how to navigate through the pain and suffering as well. We have the opportunity to do something we have never done in human history. We have the chance to become the best versions of ourselves, all working together for the good of God. We are alive in the most unprecedented of times, and regardless of where we lay our focus, there will be both pain and beauty. However, if we focus on the beauty, there will be much more of it for those of us who are aligned with God's will, which is always love. The times are tumultuous and uncertain from our human lens, but they are also miraculous and brilliant through God's lens. How am I waiting in patient hope? I'm choosing to focus on love, I am seeing love, and I'm choosing love. Thank you.